Good morning, ma'am. I can hear you.
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning. So I'm going to continue the infections, one of the topics of infections. All right. So is this topic taken previously, hepatitis B? Who is the class monitor? Is he or she there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm there.
What topics did you finish in the infection smart till now? Okay, let's start the topic. So today we are going to learn about a few points in hepatitis B. You must have been at least acquainted with it. So we are going to see on various topics like incidence and prevalence of hepatitis B, properties of hepatitis B virus, genomic structure, serology, pathogenesis, clinical features, complications, sequelae, laboratory investigations, differential diagnosis, treatment, prophylaxis, and prognosis. So, what is the incidence and prevalence of hepatitis B? Approximately 2 billion people worldwide have been infected. 400 million are chronically infected. 15 to 40% die of complications. Approximately 50,000 people, that is. So, if you see in the map, the most affected areas are or highly infective areas, as you see, is here the dark blue areas in the Africa, in the South America, in the Greenland, right? Where India is in the intermediate zone. Okay. So what are the properties of hepatitis B virus? A member of Hepadna virus group it is. Circular, partially double-stranded DNA. Replication, how does it happen? It happens by reverse transcription and not possible to propagate virus in a cell culture. We can't culture the virus. So what is the structure? As we all know, the structure, this is the, we'll go from inside out. This is the inner DNA, double-stranded DNA. Then as we go out, you can see what you see is hepatitis B antigen, hepatitis B E antigen. And then you see a core antigen. The blue one is a core antigen. And then you see a nucleocapsid. The gray one is nucleocapsid. Then you go to the envelope. In the envelope, you see what? You see the envelope lipids. And you see what else? You see the surrounding where what you get attached, what gets attached to the envelope is hepatitis B surface antigen, that is HPS-AG. Okay, this is the virion. It can be in the shape of a spherical or it can be elongated as well. So they are the double particles, outer lipoprotein envelope, inner viral nucleocapsid, as we have already seen, and these are the Dane particles. Three particulate forms, their surface particles, which are 22 nm, most abundant extraviral envelope protein, spherical or tubular. 42 nm is double-shelled intact virus. Both are covered by HPS-AG and are seen in blood. 27 nm core particle, that is nanometers, covered by HBC-AG, never seen in blood. HBeAg is soluble, binds to smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and gets transported into the circulation. So what are these? This is the genomic structure of HBV. So this is the double-stranded DNA, as you see the 3' end and the 5' end. This is the P polymerase structure. Then you see core structure. Then you see pre-S1, S2. This is how the replication happens, right? And this is the X. So serology, what are the different antibodies or antigens you see? One is the HBsAg, hallmark of infection, appears 1 to 10 weeks of infection. So when you get infected with the hepatitis B virus, you get HBsAg in the beginning, appears within 1 to 10 weeks of the infection. If recovered, HBsAg disappears in next 4 to 6 weeks. So when the hepatitis B infection subsides, even the HBsAg antigen, it subsides or it disappears. And then antibodies develop. What are the antibodies called? They are called anti-HBs antibodies, which occur after 6 months of infection. Next is IgM anti-HBC. HBC is core antigen. So IgM is when the infection is active, acute infections, and very low in chronic infections. So you remember IgM, as you know, it is more seen in acute infections. Then IgG you see in chronic infections. Anti-HBs they occur when the person is cured or recovered of the active hepatitis B infection, and only anti-HBC with no HB antigen or anti-HBs. That is when there is any window period or chronic infection. So what is HBeAg? Secreted nucleocapsid protein. It is qualitative marker of HBV replication and relative infectivity. Disappears with clinical improvement and resolution of infection. So persistent of HBE more than 3 months of acute infection. It predicts chronic infection. HBV DNA is what? It's a quantitative marker. So if you do HBV DNA at the titers, you can know how infective that person is. So what is HBxAg? It is affects the calcium release which activates the signal transduction pathways, leads to HBV replication, and role in carcinogenesis is also known. Hepatitis B serology, as you know, everybody knows, see, when the infection starts, that is from the 0 month, okay? Initially, what happens is you will get HBs AG. This is the curve. It can stay up to less than 6 months. If it stays more than 6 months, that means the patient can have chronic hepatitis B. But if it is decreasing within 5 months or 4 5 months, then the patient, that means the patient is recovered. Then after the HBs AG is decreased or it gets unnoticeable, then the antibodies, that is anti-HBs AG, starts and it persists lifelong. The other EAAG, as I told you, it is seen in the active stage, but it can get disappeared within 4 months of the infection, and anti-HBe antibody occurs. Okay. The other one is anti-HBC. That is a core antigen antibody. It can persist for longer duration and it appears early in the infection. So this is a very important graph. You need to draw this in any hepatitis B question and it is very important. So as you see HBsAg, you see in the incubation period, acute stage you see HBsAg as well, and even you can see HBeAg, and then early stage anti-HBC, and then anti-HBsAg in the late stage. This, as I told you, it's already mentioned. So initially when you have symptoms, it is HBeAg and then anti-HBe, and then you can do HBV DNA titers in the blood, which tells you about how infective the patient is. And then after the weeks of exposure, what happens? In the acute stage, HBeAg is there. In the chronic stage, anti-HBe. Similarly, HBsAg, if it is persisting, that means the patient can turn into chronic hepatitis. Okay? So what happens if the patient is HBsAg positive, still the antibodies have not occurred and IgGm is present, then that means it is acute hepatitis B. HBsAg positive, anti-HBsAg negative, IgG positive, HBeAg, that means chronic hepatitis B because IgG with active viral replication because HBe is still there. HBsAg is positive, IgG is positive, anti-HBe is positive. That means chronic hepatitis. That means IgG means chronic with low viral replication. Okay. Then HBsAg positive, antibodies are positive, IgG is positive. That means it is chronic. These may be positive or negative. That means heterotypic anti-HBs. Then HBsAg negative, anti-HBs negative, IgM positive. That means it could be acute hepatitis B. The patient has not developed antibodies still. Then antibodies are positive, IgG is positive, anti-HBe is positive or negative. That means patient is recovering because HBsAg is negative, right? Then only anti-HBs is positive. That means patient has got immunity, lifelong immunity, and is completely recovered from the hepatitis B infection and is immune to certain extent. So this is how the replication of HBB occurs. That is the titers which we measure. So what is the first step? When the virus gets attached to the cell, then there is a mechanism called reverse transcription where the DNA gets replicated and that's how the virus attacks the cell. This is pathogenesis, as you already know. This is the viral, that is, this is the virus. It attacks the natural killer cells, natural killer T cells, and macrophages. It releases a number of cytokines and tumor necrosis factor and then attacks the cell. Cell, which cell is this? This is a hepatocyte. Hepatocyte is a liver cell. Then it causes cell death. But if the body is responding to it, then by what cells respond to the infection? They are the monocytes and the Kupffer cells. They release interleukins, and what happens is HBeAg gets activated. Then what happens? CD4 T cells and the CD8 T cells. For the long-term immunity, we need T cells, right? So these cells, they activate the B cell. That is CD4 T cell activates the B cell and antibodies are formed. It could be in the form of anti-HBs antibodies or anti-HBe antibodies. And then as well the CD8 T cell, it attacks it the virus gets attached to it, and then what happens is there are release of many perforins, granzymes, and when the hepatocyte is attached with the antibodies, then the infection is subsided. So this is how we develop long-term immunity, and this is the short term. What are the epidemiological features? As you already know, the incubation period is between 30 to 180 days. 180 days means approximately 6 months. So onset is insidious or acute. Age preference is it could happen to anybody, young adults because they are sexually and active and percutaneous, like small babies from mother to baby transmission, and toddlers. Transmission is percutaneous, which is a major route. Perinatal, that is mostly in the third trimester of the pregnancy or during early postpartum period or sexual transmission. What are the routes of transmission? As we know, IV drug use, like using multiple, same person using the needles multiple times or they're sharing the needles, sexual transmission, blood transfusion, then vertical transfusion, and then needle stick injury. So high risk for HPV infection in whom screening is recommended. So who should get tested for HBsAg? Should we get tested as healthcare workers? Yes, definitely. So persons born in countries with high HBV infection, household and sexual contacts of person with hepatitis B, babies born to HBsAg positive mothers, persons who have used injections or drugs, multiple sexual contacts or history of sexually transmitted disease, men who have sex with other men, persons with elevated ALT or AST, blood plasma organ tissue semen donors, persons with HCV or HIV infection, hemodialysis patient because they get dialyzed multiple times, so infection can occur through hospital acquired, and then pregnant women because they're immunocompromised, persons who are source of blood or body fluids, that would be an indication of PEP. For example, nurses, healthcare workers, doctors, surgeons, okay? Persons requiring immunosuppressive or cytotoxic therapy, persons who are having malignancy or who are on chemotherapy because they are all immunosuppressed. So, what are the clinical features of acute hepatitis B? So, what are the constitutional symptoms? Initially, what symptoms do you have? Okay. So, precedes onset of jaundice by 1 to 2 symptoms, 1 to 2 weeks. So, before the appearance of jaundice, the first 1 to 10 days, what symptoms do you have after the incubation period? So, what are those? It could be generalized weakness, myalgias, anorexia, nausea, vomiting, association frequently with alterations in olfaction and taste, fatigue, malaise, arthralgias, myalgias, headache, photophobia, pharyngitis, cough, corazon, like any other viral symptoms. And there is a term serum sickness like syndrome, and then dark urine, clay colored stools. Okay, and 1 to 5 days before clinical jaundice. So what is the icteric phase? So then you come into, after the constitutional symptoms, you come to icteric phase where patient has jaundice. Okay, there can be weight loss. They will have pain in the right hypochondrium because the liver gets enlarged because of the congestion. Okay, and then splenomegaly, cervical lymphadenopathy can occur. Then rarely you can have the obstructive jaundice picture and few spider angiomas, and recovery phases ranges from 2 to 12 weeks. That is usually 3 to 4 months after the onset of jaundice. So approximately patient can take up to 6 months for complete recovery. So what is, as we know now we have seen the chronic features, acute features of the hepatitis. Now we'll see chronic hepatitis. So what are the clinical features? They are fatigue and persistent or intermittent jaundice. That means patient is getting, uh, that means hepatitis B, HbsAg is still persistent, or the infection or the DNA is still getting replicated. So what happens? It can have many complications of chronic hepatitis. What are those? It could be cirrhosis. As we all know, what are the components of cirrhosis? It could be ascites, edema, bleeding esophageal, gastroesophageal varices, hepatic encephalopathy, coagulopathy, hypersplenism, extrahepatic complications like myalgias, arthritis, purpuricutaneous lesions, and then it could affect the kidneys, right? Glomerular nephritis, and you can have vasculitis also because of hepatitis B, and cryoglobulinemia. Hepatitis D superinfection can also occur, appears as a clinical exacerbation or an episode resembling acute viral hepatitis. So B and D they go like there is synchronization between them. So the symptoms are all the same. B and D. So level of HBV replication is the most important risk factor for development of cirrhosis and hepatocellular carcinoma. in both HBeAg reactive and HBe negative individuals. So level of HBV is very important to note that how, to what extent is the patient infected. Okay, so HBeAg reactive chronic hepatitis B. So what happens if there is HBe positive? So it could be liver injury in the replicative phase, which could be severe, and non-replicative phase, it is minimal. HBeAg in replicative phase can be present, and non-replicative phase, it is absent. HBV DNA in replicative phase, as I told you, is a marker of replication. 1,000 to 10,000 international units per ml, and in non-replicative phase is less. HBcAg, that is core antigen, it could be present in replicative, non-replicative, it is absent. Infectivity is very high in the replicative phase and limited in the non-replicative phase. So HBeAg negative chronic hepatitis B. This is one of the variant of hepatitis B. So more common in Mediterranean, European, and in Asia. Occurs due to pre-coagulations. HBsAg, HBeAg undetectable with HBV DNA levels lower, that is a non-replicative phase, and then chronic, should be differentiated from inactive carriers by sequential monitoring. Okay, this is a histologic grading of the hepatitis B in the chronic phase. Okay, so what is there are various scorings here. How you see in pathologically, how will you differentiate? So as you go forward with the scoring, there could be periportal necrosis, piecemeal necrosis, or bridging necrosis. Okay, then there could be intralobular necrosis. It is again various types like pan-acinar, multi-acinar, and doubling, tripling time of the fields, like the spreading to more areas in the intralobular necrosis and portal inflammation as well. Okay, so in that there are again variants, that is mild, moderate, severe, and then the other stages fibrosis. This was necroinflammatory stage, and this is fibrosis stage. So fibrosis, it could be portal, it could be bridging, and the last stage is cirrhosis. Okay, so this is the portal fibrosis. This is in portal fibrosis with septate. Okay, this is septal fibrosis, and this is at the end, it is cirrhosis. So degree of liver injury in chronic hepatitis is variable. So histologic features are a prognostic indication. That is when you do a biopsy, liver biopsy, you will get to know which stage of the hepatitis the person is at. So the 5-year survival rate depends on mild chronic hepatitis, that is 97% survival rate is there. Moderate to severe is there is 86% survival rate in the 5 years. And chronic hepatitis and post-necrotic cirrhosis, of course, is 55% in the 5-year survival rate. So what are the complications as we know? Acute hepatitis B, 90% of the patients can get resolution. That is, patients can get anti-HBsAg antibodies. Okay, it could be fulminant. It could be can be stable, and 9% is HBsAg positive even after 6 months. That is, patient is growing into approximately chronic stage. Okay, in that the 50% can again get resolution. The others can be in a carrier state, asymptomatic, then chronic persistent hepatitis, and then chronic active hepatitis. So the active hepatitis is more dangerous. It can lead to extrahepatic disease, that is in a form of vasculitis PAN, that is polyarteritis nodosum, or glomerulonephritis, cirrhosis, as we know, and hepatocellular carcinoma. So these are the sequelae of hepatitis B infection. What investigations do we do in hepatitis B? As you know, you do serum aminotransferase, that is ALT, AST. Initially, it will increase and diminishes in the recovery phase. Okay, serum bilirubin, of course, you do in LFT, that is 2.5 milligrams. Jaundice is visible in 2.5. 20 is severe viral hepatitis, and 30 milligrams is viral hepatitis with underlying hemolytic anemia. Yes. So 2.5 milligrams per DL. What is the normal level of serum bilirubin? As you know, it is approximately till 1.2, 0.2 to 1.2 milligram per deciliter. Then you can have, as it is viral infection, you can have neutropenia and lymphopenia. Then you can have, of course, PT is prolonged. Okay. Because why PT is prolonged? Because coagulation factors are produced in the liver. So if the liver is not functioning or malfunctioning, prothrombin time is prolonged because coagulation is prolonged. Poor hepatic glycogen reserves, of course, the glucogen will get diminished. Prolonged nausea, vomiting, inadequate carbohydrate intake, patient can have hypoglycemia. Serum ALT levels are normal or mildly elevated, alkaline phosphatase, and fall in serum albumin and elevation in the gamma globulins. And then you can have hematuria or proteinuria because patient can end up in glomerulonephritis as well. Next is differential diagnosis to viral hepatitis. All infections which cause jaundice can be differential diagnosis for hepatitis B. Okay, for example, CMV, herpes, Coxsackie, bacterial infections like Leptospira, brucellosis, mycobacterial tuberculosis, parasitic infections like pneumocystis and toxoplasmosis. Certain drugs definitely can cause and anesthetic agents can cause jaundice. Like for example, anybody knows like feridone can cause jaundice, autoimmune hepatitis, alcoholic hepatitis, any anti-tuberculous drugs which can cause jaundice. Anybody? Read about it. Alcoholic hepatitis, of course, acute cholecystitis or ascending cholangitis, acute fatty liver pregnancy, cholestasis of pregnancy and health syndrome, and malignant metastasis in the liver. All these cause jaundice. So it is the important feature or important differential diagnosis for hepatitis B. How do you treat? So mostly 99% recover spontaneously. They do not require any specific antiviral, but who require antiviral are in severe acute hepatitis B. That means, for example, still the HbSAg is positive even after 6 months of the infection. Then you give oral entecavir or tenofovir. These are the oral antiviral drugs. Then you have to take a high calorie in the morning, restricted protein diet, and oral lactulose. Why oral lactulose? Because to avoid hepatic encephalopathy, which is a complication of hepatitis B infection, severe hepatitis B infection. And then even glucocorticoids, no value in active acute viral hepatitis, but only in the chronic stages it can be given to decrease the infection or inflammation. Fulminant hepatitis is where you have to do exchange transfusion, plasmapheresis, or liver transplantation. So prophylaxis of hepatitis B. Everybody should be vaccinated with hepatitis B. Before you join internship, at least you get yourself checked. HbsAg and hepatitis B. HbsAg first is very important. Okay. So how do you do pre-exposure prophylaxis? Of course, you have to take vaccine. Okay. That is at the 0 month. That is the 0 day, first day. And then you give after the 1 month of the first dose, and then after 6 months of the first dose. Okay, you give it IM. Pregnancy is not a contraindication. You have to give vaccination in the pregnancy. What are the vaccines available? They're available in the form of Recombivax or Energix. So PEP, that is sorry, this is still pre-exposure, and then these are the doses of you give for the vaccination in the infants, adolescents, adults, and in hemodialysis patients. Okay. Almost the schedule is same for everybody. 0, 1, and 6 months. Remember this 0, 1, 6. In children, you give 0.5, and in adults, you give double the dose. So this is post-exposure prophylaxis. Post-exposure prophylaxis is when you have an accidental linguistic injury, or you have when the person is exposed to the percutaneous infections, or then you can have any during the surgeries if the surgeon gets affected by the HBsAg person. Then what you do is you have to first check the HBsAg if the patient is positive or not. Then you have to do HBV viral DNA titers to know how infective or what infected stage is the patient at. And even the doctor or the exposed person should get checked for his HBsAg levels. So if the HBsAg levels are negative, then the person is most probably safe, and then if he's vaccinated previously, then you can give just the single dose of immunoglobulin. And then for perinatal exposure of infants born to HBsAg positive mothers, so what do? You give single dose of immunoglobulin 0.5 ml IM to thigh immediately after birth, followed by complete course of vaccine to begin within first 12 hours of life. So you give 0, 1, 6 doses of vaccine at 0, 1, 6 months. Okay. Exposed by sexual contact to patient with acute hepatitis B, single dose of immunoglobulin you give, and then complete course of vaccine. Protection levels of anti-HBs levels will tell you how protected you are. In 80 to 90% cases, it is for 5 years. 60 to 80% it is for 10 years. In infancy, for at least 2 decades after vaccination. Booster doses recommended when HBs levels falls within less than 10 ml international units per ml. So always get anti-HBs levels checked after 6 months of vaccination. First, then you can get it done every year as healthcare workers. So how do you treat the chronic hepatitis B? What is the main aim is to decrease or lower the virus replication which is happening by the reverse transcription. So you have to give interferons. There again PEG interferons, oral nucleoside analogs like lamivudine, entecavir, telbivudine, oral nucleotide analogs like adifovir, tenofovir, right? So you have to always target at the replication site. So here you have entry inhibitors, and then you have HBsAg release inhibitor drugs. Then you will have your immunomodulators, and then you will have nucleotide analogs, and then you have assembly effectors. So these are the various treatment therapies. I mean therapies for HBeAg positive chronic hepatitis B. As I told you, PEG, lamivudine, adifovir, entecavir, telbivudine, tenofovir. These are the drugs which can be helpful in treating the chronic hepatitis B virus affected patient. In this, the interferons are subcutaneous. The rest all are oral. Right. So, what are the recommendations? I mean, what recommendations for treatment of chronic hepatitis B? That is HBeAg reactive, HBeAg negative. So, reactive, it could be chronic hepatitis, cirrhosis compensated, and cirrhosis decompensated. So, you can first is if it is there are no symptoms, you can wait. Then, if there is any chronic hepatitis, you treat with oral agents, not PEG, and then you treat with PEG in the decompensated stage as well. So then the others are in the chronic hepatitis HBeAg negative. You can always start with the oral antiviral agents. So recommendations is HBeAg positive, as I told you. HBV viral DNA levels that you do if they are more than 2000, go for ALT. Then if it is more than the upper limit, you consider liver biopsy. And then you see which stage the patient is at. And if it is normal, then you always monitor and consider liver biopsy and treatment. HBV viral DNA levels are less, ALT is normal. Monitor ALT and HBV every 6 months. If ALT is again elevated, consider liver biopsy. If the ALT is more than upper limit, then you go for liver biopsy. The most important things are ALT and HBV DNA levels. Okay, right. This is again the same thing. But if it is negative, we again monitor the ALT levels. Upper limit, more than upper limit, go for liver biopsy. More here as well, and less than or if it is normal, then you consider always monitoring the levels of ALT and HBV DNA. So combinations of oral nucleoside and nucleotide agents is more important. Who do you use is immunosuppressed patients, patients with higher levels of HBV DNA and resistance to other drugs. HIV and HBV co-infection. How do you treat? In HIV, as we know, you do anti any CD4 counts. So already patient is taking lamivudine for HIV, then add or substitute one NRTI with, this is nothing but tenofovir. Okay. And lamivudine, naive. That means patient is new. Then you add tenofovir, you add emdicitabine, and you add lamivudine. This is a combination. Okay. These are the drugs where you give for the patients with HIV and HBV, hepatitis B, while combination infection. So prognosis, how do you think it is? Acute hepatitis, definitely they recover. 1% they can worsen. HDV, so that is super infection with hepatitis B. Then you can wait and see if the patient is affected chronically, and then you go for further management. So World Hepatitis Day, as you know, is July 28th. And always, the most important thing is always get vaccinated, check your HBS AG levels, or then after vaccination, always go for anti-HBS AG levels, antibody levels, to see how immune or how protected you are. Thank you so much. We end the session now. Okay.